South Africa's rise in youth unemployment is highlighted annually on Youth Day. But what action is there to get the youth of the country gainfully employed? The struggles begin early on during schooling years, is further exacerbated by high school dropout numbers. How do we fix this? Can we fix it? Crystal Williams, project lead at Youth Capital. Very good afternoon. Thanks for speaking to us, Crystal. I suppose that is the million-dollar question. How do we fix youth unemployment?
At Youth Capital, we believe that the reason we've been unable to address this huge crisis in our country is because, one, we haven't included young people in the conversations. They've all been top-down, they've been government-driven or driven by the private sector, but they haven't really spoken to young people to understand what their lived experience is. And secondly, we believe that we haven't had a holistic plan for youth unemployment that covers the journey that people face from education all the way through into a sustainable livelihood and being a thriving adult. And so at Youth Capital, we've come up with a 10-point action plan that takes into account young people's lived experience, but also looks at existing evidence and research. And we firmly believe that this 10-point action plan is what is needed if we are really going to address youth unemployment.
Now, one of the things that you say on your website is that you cannot do it alone. As far as transformation of the country, what is that process of engagement looking like?
So we don't believe that any one organization or entity can address this huge problem. Even the government, we don't believe it can do it alone. And so we at Youth Capital will really see ourselves as a choreographer in this space, bringing together policymakers, young people, evidence and research, and the youth organizations who work directly with young people on the ground around this 10-point action plan. We believe that everybody has a skill to add to the conversation, has a voice that is needed in the conversation, and that we need to build on each other's experiences and knowledge if we're really going to address the challenge of youth unemployment. For instance, the president made his announcement this morning, talking again about the presidential youth employment intervention, and this is a great step by government because it starts to bring together different initiatives. And starts to bring it together in a holistic plan. But we need to bring the private sector and civil society and young people into this plan as well.
You talk about a 10-point action plan. Can you take us through maybe one or two of those points?
Sure. So the action plan covers three areas: the area of education, transitions, and jobs. And if we look at education, we're really speaking about the journey that young people face and making sure that the one point that we raise quite a lot is certifiers. Young people need certificates to prove their qualifications to the world of work, whether it's a matric certificate or a post-school certificate, and they shouldn't be hampered by administrative delays or historical student debt in having those certificates. When you look at the period of transition, we look at the cost of job seeking. I don't think many people realize the astronomical costs that young people face, anywhere between 500 and 1,000 Rand a month just to look for work. Here we're looking at data costs, transport costs. And then if you look at jobs, the point that I think is important is in the context of the president's speech earlier today, is we need to make sure that public works opportunities work. We need to make public work opportunities created by the government work for young people as stepping stones into future career pathways, as well as making sure that these work opportunities are meaningful for the communities that they are meant to serve.
Now, unemployment for young people is in the 60s or 70 percentiles. Let's look at the practical aspects. How do we actually deal with it? Because there are lots of policies over time that have been talked about or said to be implemented, but are they actually working?
I think what's missing is with all policy in this country is we have lots of great policy on paper, but the implementation falls flat. And the reason the implementation falls flat is because we aren't speaking to the people that the policy is supposed to serve. We haven't really engaged with young people to understand what are their challenges on the ground, or engage with other people working in the sector. An example, again, I'm going to mention the Basic Employment Education Initiative, which was launched last year. It was done in a rush. Yes, it provided 300,000 young people with work opportunities for 4 months, but now all those young people are back at home without any income. We ran a survey which we'll be talking about in the next couple of weeks, but only 60% of these young people received any training. And so work experience should come with transferable skills that young people can use to access the next opportunity. And so again, there's been lots of money pushed into this initiative by the government, but this money is not really accounting into any real change at the end of the day, because we haven't taken into account other implementers in the space who have been working with young people in schools for years and have the knowledge and know-how, and we should be talking to them to find best practice.
Now today, 45 years on, we celebrate Youth Day because of the uprisings that occurred in 1976, where young people stood up and said no. Now, coming back today, you have millions of young people. In fact, almost 30% of the population is young people. So there is power in numbers. How are young people, or should they be, harnessing those numbers to deal with the issues of unemployment? Can they use numbers to put pressure on government, to put pressure on private enterprise?
Absolutely. We see that young people are taking to digital activism, especially in light of COVID. We can't be having big marches or protests. And so young people are getting innovative on Twitter or organizing themselves through WhatsApp chats. We've seen it happen in numerous campaigns, across the world, from Fees Must Fall locally to Black Lives Matter, how young people have used social media to show their power and to put pressure on governments. And we have been running a campaign called Be the Driving Force, where we've spoken to young activists around a range of issues, which are pertinent and at the forefront of young people's minds. And what we're finding is that young people have the energy, they have the knowledge, they have the solutions. They just need to be given the space in order to speak out what they believe is how things should be done. And so we need to provide that space for them in a real way. And needs to open the doors for young people and give them a real seat at the table.
Yeah, but that's my point, that you talk about they need to be given space. It's almost a suggestion that if and when government so pleases, that time is not on their sides. Young people are struggling. How do they wrestle the initiative, if it were? So
I think what COVID has done, and it's been a blessing for young people, is we've seen that, especially with the launch of the National Youth Policy, young people could join that meeting. There was a consultation on the IYDS, the Integrated Youth Development Strategy, and you could join that meeting virtually, so young people can join via Microsoft Teams. And I think this is, it might seem like a small thing, but I think it's a step in the right direction, saying it's open, sharing the link on Twitter, young people are invited in. The next step, though, is when people are invited in, that they need to give an opportunity to speak. And so what's happened is they've been given, the link to join call, for example, but then, not really, there isn't really space given in the meeting to hear from young people. And so I think this is an easy thing that government could do. And I think that they need to do it because young people are, knocking at the door. And if government doesn't open it, young people are going to find other ways to exert their frustrations. And yeah.
Crystal, thank you kindly for your time on this Youth Day. Appreciate your time.